Alright, what's up guys? So today I am going to change the intake fuel pump and my main fuel pump on my 1986 Volvo 240. Some things that have been going on are a loss of power being the big one. Take some turns and my car just shuts off, and I've checked the fuel pump relay, my timing's on point, checked vacuum leaks, checked my math. So I need to replace the fuel pumps anyways because they haven't been changed since I've had the car, and I'm just hoping that that's what the problem is. So I'm gonna jack the car up and pull fuses 4 and 6, which is the intake pump and the main fuel pump, and let that run dry to relieve pressure in the system. And what I'll do is, if you want to watch how to change the main fuel pump, I'll put a timestamp in the description and you guys can fast forward to it, or if you want to watch the whole thing, you're more than welcome. Alright, so now that everything's out of my trunk, I'm just going to peel back this carpet. Alright, so what I'm going to do is just remove these connections, unscrew the plate, and work the pump out. Main feed line right here, and the return line is right here. I'm just going to loosen up this Phillips head, and then undo this clamp and pull both lines off. Alright, so now that the two fuel lines are off the nipples in the tank, I am going to grab my new bung nut, the new seal hose clamps, and the bung nut remover. And now what I'm going to do is remove this monstrosity right here, and I'm going to basically put my bung nut removal tool on top, add a 3/8 socket in the top here, and unscrew counterclockwise. Make sure you guys are very careful when removing this. Obviously, use your due diligence. That was probably the hardest freaking thing I've ever had to do, is fish this contraption out of that little hole right there. Looks like my fuel sock is completely done. Now that the sending unit is out of the car, I'm going to unscrew that little nut right there and that little nut right there for the positive negative. I'm going to slide this up and then remove this sock, unscrew this ground, and slide the pump out. I'm going to replace this little 3-inch section of hose that it gives me and use new hose clamps and the hardware. Alright, so since my new submersible fuel line is too long, I'm just going to match it up to the old one and cut it with a razor. So now it's the same length as the old one, and I'm just going to slide everything up and then tighten it. And got the first one on, and I just used the clamps that came with it. I was going to use the screw-ons, but the diameter of the rubber hose isn't big enough, or it's too big, should I say. Alright, so since I got the pump up there, I'm going to reconnect the terminals and slide this back in the cup. Okay, everything's put back together. There's the fuel sock, and now we get to fish it back into the gas tank. Alright, so I tightened the bung nut up. I'm just going to tighten down these hose clamps and put all of this back nice and move on to the regular fuel pump. Okay, so here we are underneath the car. What I'm going to do is loosen up the three 12mm bolts. There's one here There's one right there, and then the other one is right here. Alright, so here I am on the back of the fuel housing here, and to the right we have the fuel filter, and then here to the left we have the fuel pump. What I'm going to do is clamp off this fuel line right here with my vice grips and just put some sort of protective coating on the teeth so that you don't put a hole in the fuel line. And then I'm going to loosen up that clamp right there. Alright, so I got my whole fuel system out basically, and I'm going to clean this all up and swap out the fuel filter and the fuel pump while keeping that intact.
Okay, so you'll have a way back and forth to work.
Okay. To be over with.
Huh?
I just want it to be over with. Alright, so got the new filter and the new pump in. Boy, was that a pain in the ass. All this is tightened down. So I'm gonna bolt it up and we'll go from there. Alright, so the two ends for the positive negative on my fuel pump were frayed, and a lot of the insulation had been worn off. So what I did was I cut it back to some fresh wire and cut these two pieces off. Put a butt connector on one end, and then I'm gonna wrap both of them in electrical tape like this, and then put this heat shrink tubing over the top of it. And then butt connect it back up underneath the car and call it a day. Alright, so my tray is back in order, and now it's time to bolt it up. And as you can see here, I just am connecting the positive and negative terminals, and then using the two 12mm bolts to hold the tray up. But I don't tighten them all the way, just in case I need to slide it around a little bit. And as you can see here, I'm on the back side connecting the new hose clamp to the fuel line into the pump, and then also tightening down that banjo fitting on the back side of the filter. Now I have everything bolted up and ready to go. All I need to do is tighten the 12mm bolts, and we'll start this bad boy up. Alright, so my fuses are back in. Fuel pump relay changed out. I've primed the system a couple times. And boom! We got juice.